Hello friends, welcome to this video. In this video, we are going to see everything about pivot tables. Pivot table is one of the important, powerful, inbuilt data interpretation tool which allows us to slice and dice our data based on our requirements. Pivot table is very commonly used, and it's important that you understand pivot table better to work on Excel day-to-day basis. Right. We are going to cover the basics of pivot table and then as much as possible in the advanced section in this particular video. To start with, we have a simple data set where we have the sales data for multiple cars during multiple dates. We have the date, product, which is different cars. We got the variant of each cars, region where the sales happen, what is the production cost for each car, what is the sale unit cost for each car, and how many sales we had for each car, what's the manufacturing cost, which is the multiplication of your production cost into the number of sales, and what's the revenue, which is nothing but your unit cost into number of sales we made. Now, as I told, it's very simple to create. We can in fact create a pivot table in less than 30 seconds. All we need to do is select the data, hit insert and hit pivot table. So here is your selected data range, and then it gives a couple of options. You can choose to load the pivot table in a new worksheet, or you can have it in the existing worksheet. If you choose the existing worksheet, you need to choose where you want to load the pivot table. In our example, we will do a new worksheet so that it's not cluttered in a single worksheet. So let me give new worksheet. Sheet number 2, we have got the pivot table. Let's do with a simple example. So I will just choose the product in the row and I will choose the revenue as the value. Now we have hundreds of data in the main sheet, which has been converted into a simple snippet which shows which car had how much of revenue for that particular time range in the year, basically in our example. Now this is how simple you can create a pivot table. Now let's explore how well we can interact with the data and how we can interpret the data as well. Now let's add few more things to it. Now let's say I want to filter out based on the date. So let me add date into the filter. So I've got, say for example, 2nd Jan, how much sales we had. So we had just had one car and the revenue was 42,522. If you want to have multiple selections, click on this one and you can choose how much ever you want. So on those 3 dates we had 3 different cars being sold, and this is a revenue. So let's do select all, and now let's interchange this. Let's put product over here and then date over here. So I want the sales for this particular car. So each date, how much is the sale happen and what is the revenue for this. Now this may look again a bit tedious. We got multiple dates over here. So let's group this into a simpler format. Right click, there's something called group over here. Hit group, and now you can choose whether you want to show it in monthly basis or you want to show it in quarterly basis. So let's say, let me start off with months. So all those dates are getting grouped into months, Jan, Feb, March, etc. Right? If you want to show it in quarterly basis, again go to group, do a quarter and remove the months. So Excel automatically converts all the dates into quarter 1, 2, 3 and 4. So you choose a different car and then the number changes. Now this is how you can make Excel to group your date or any other value for that matter into different categories, which is inbuilt. Now let's say I want to show this revenue as percentage rather than numbers. I want to show the revenue as percentage. So let's say right click, show value as, and percentage of the grand total. So for RITs, quarter 1 accounted for 26.01, quarter 3 accounted for 42.22, etc. If you want to change the car, and the number changes, right? Let me add a twist to this to showcase how the percentage varies for a different set of car. Now let me bring the product here. So Alto, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. Now let me show this as pure numbers over here for a moment. Now I will have two options. I can showcase the value as percentage of the grand total, which is going to be the overall revenue. So Alto in quarter 1 accounted for 2.18 of the overall value. If you want to choose just the Alto's calculation, again right click, show value as percentage of the row total. Now this one is going to give the 100% for that particular car. See, the 100% for this particular car. Again the same thing, 100% for this particular car. Now this is how you can interactively play with the data in terms of percentages and numbers, etc. Right? Now let's introduce slices. To show it better, let me import or let me insert two more pivot tables. Again I have selected the data, insert pivot table. This time, okay, let me do it in a new worksheet only. So sheet number 3, I got pivot table number 2. Pivot table number 1 is here, pivot table number 2. Let me insert another pivot table. This time I will choose where I need to keep. Let me go to sheet number 3, say let me keep it over here. So I've got two different pivot tables. Now the use of a slicer acts as a filter. Now if you want to have multiple filters, if you want to have easy filtering of data, that's where you use the slicer. Now for pivot number 2, let me say I have date and then I have the revenue. So quarter 1 in total have this much revenue, quarter 2, quarter 3, etc. In pivot number 3, let me get product and let me get the revenue. Now in our example, let's say I want to showcase in quarter 1 what is the revenue for a particular car. So let me click anywhere in the pivot table, go to pivot table analyze, hit the insert slicer button over here. So this particular pivot has date. So let me get the date. So the date is in quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3 and quarter 4. Here let me go to pivot table analyze again, insert slicer, and this we have the product. So I hit the product over here. Now look very carefully. Okay, before that we need to create relationships. Now if you right click and say report connections, so this particular slicer, the date slicer, is connected to pivot table 2 in sheet number 3. Now we want to get a connection to the pivot table number 3 as well. Hit here. Similarly, this product slicer, we need to create the connection. Sorry, I just removed it. So let me bring it here, right click, report connections. So it is already with the pivot table number 3. I want to connect it with pivot table number 2 as well. Now notice very carefully about the numbers which may change now. Let's say I want to choose only CS. I hit CS, this number changed. Let me remove it for a moment. So Q1 revenue is 1397840. I hit a particular product, say Ritz, and this number changes. So here obviously it's showing only Ritz, but the number changes for each and every quarter for this particular product. Now let me introduce the second filter. I need Q2. So Ritz Q2 had only this much revenue. Or if you want to have multiple choices, do a control and select. So Ritz Q2 and Q3, this is the revenue. So Ritz and CS Q2 and Q3, this is the revenue. Now this is the use of a slicer. Slicer is very useful, very handy if you have multiple filters and useful filters which will really showcase the data in a different way. Okay, now that is the slicer. So let's remove all the filters and let's remove the slicer as well. So either you can do a right click and remove product, or you can just click and hit the delete button and this goes off. Now that is a slicer. Let's introduce the timeline now. Now to have a timeline enabled in pivot table, you need to have one of the data, one of the values, one of the columns in the date format. If you don't have any of the value inside the pivot table without a date format, then the timeline is not going to be enabled. So let's keep this particular pivot table for example and go to pivot table analyze, insert timeline over here, hit timeline. As I told, it happens only when you have a date. Hit date, and this is going to introduce a small window or a small pane like your slicer pane. Now by default it is going to show you month on month. So hit August and this is going to change. September, if you are seeing the revenue value, it changes month on month, right? This one also gives you an option to choose quarterly. So Q1, this is the revenue. 3, this is the revenue. If you want days, TDS, but yes, the slider is going to help you, and it's going to have the month and the dates. On July 10th there was absolutely nothing, so it doesn't have anything. So if you have multiple years, I think in our example we just have 2019, but if you have multiple years, then you can just choose the years, which again is going to segregate the data or interpret the data based on the years. And that's the use of timelines. Now let's get a quick wrap of what we have seen till now. Initially we started off with a very simple example of having a product and the revenue, and next we have done how we can showcase the revenue into percentage wise rather than just showing the numbers. And in percentages we have seen how to have a percentage of the grand total and how to have a percentage of a particular row item or a particular sub item, each and every product as well. Next we saw how to have the date to be converted into a quarter. So Excel converts all the dates with its inbuilt algorithm into quarters as well. Next we inserted slices where we have multiple filters and useful filters. After slicer we have seen the timeline. Again, to reiterate, for timeline you need to have a date value in one of your field in the pivot table. With me till now? Good. Now let's remove this for a moment. Let's go back to our old sheet and okay, let me play with this for a moment. Let me introduce a new pivot table. Okay, I have date as a filter, I have product, I have the revenue. Please note I have only sheet 1 through sheet 4. I don't have any other sheets till now. What we are trying to do in this one is we are trying to create multiple tables out of a single table based on a filter. In our case, dates. Say I want monthly filter, say Jan, Feb, March, etc. In each tab a separate table. Here I have quarterly. For these I have made it quarterly. So all I need to do is go to pivot table analyze. There's a small down arrow in pivot table, hit there, hit options and show report filter pages. You got date, which is our filter value. Hit OK. There you go. Got quarter 1 separate table, quarter 2 separate table, quarter 3, quarter 4. If I had kept the date as monthly like Jan, Feb, March, etc., you would have ended up in different tabs like for each month, Jan, Feb, March, etc. Now this is how you can create separate tables or multiple tables out of a single table. Let me delete all these things for the ease. Okay, next let's look at how to showcase the deviation of say sales, or how to show how the month-on-month sales have happened, have fared. Is it in a positive trend or a negative trend? How much percentage March sales is compared to a Feb sales, right? So let me interchange this. Let me have the date over here and let me group this as months. Okay, now I've got the revenue numbers for each and every month. Let me, for the ease of explaining, let me have another revenue column over here, same but in 2 different columns. So in the second column I'm going to hit show values as, and I'm going to hit percentage difference from. Okay, and the base field is going to be the date and the base item is going to be the previous. So this is going to compare the previous items or the previous field to see what is the percentage. Hit OK. Now this one of course is the base one, so we don't have a comparison. Second one, so Jan had 368059, Feb is like only 223899. So this is a decrease of 39% in revenue. In March you have 85882, which is a 259% increase. This way you can showcase, or this way you can see how the revenue fared month on month. Is there a deviation? And if there's a deviation, is this a positive deviation or a negative deviation? Right? So this is how you can interact with the data in terms of our requirements. Okay, now let's say we have the revenue over here, the percentage. Now we need to showcase the profit. So we, in our base data, we have the revenue and we have the manufacturing cost. We need to calculate the profit. Now we don't have it here in the base data. Let's make the pivot table to do that. Okay, let's go to pivot table analyze. There is something called fields, items and sets over here, and choose the calculated field. Let's give a name over here. Let's say I need profit 01. And what is the formula for the profit? We have the revenue, or sorry, not the revenue, we have the unit cost. Sorry, let me go back and check what is that. Okay, we have the manufacturing cost and we have the production cost. Rather, we have the revenue and the manufacturing cost. I'm so sorry for that. We go back, pivot table, analyze this calculated field. We got the revenue, so let me give a name to this, profit 02 revenue, insert field minus the manufacturing cost, insert field, and this is the profit. So in the month of January, for various cars, our revenue is this much, right? And the way we calculated is the revenue minus the manufacturing cost, and the net profit for the various cars in that particular month is 12019. So we can make Excel to do calculations on our behalf, even though we don't have those calculations in our base sheet. I hope you are with me till now. Now let's remove all these things. Let's look at how we can customize the layout options. So let me do a bit complex layout here. Let me add the product, variant, and the revenue. Now this is how the default layout is gonna be. Okay, now go to design, and then you can play with the layout options over here. Now we have the total and for that particular car, and then we have a breakup of all these totals. Now let's choose, do we need to show the subtotals or not? So if I choose subtotals and do not show subtotals, then I don't have a total for that particular car. I just have the breakup of the revenues for each and every variant of that particular car. Okay, let me bring that totals. Now if you want, you can bring it to the bottom of the group as well. Now alto here, the variant revenue, and then you have another one saying what is the total of that particular car's revenue. So let me get to the default. Right now, let's say how you want to have a grand total. If you want to have a grand total of both rows and columns, if you have multiple data, of course, then you can have rows and columns. In our case, we don't have multiple values. If you want only the rows or the columns, then you can choose what you want. In our case, it's only rows, and hence we have only the rows. Yeah. Now go to report layout. How you want. This is the default, the compact view. If you want to have an outline view where you need this one in a separate column. So if you want like this, if you want to copy this data into a different sheet, it is going to be very tough because you have the main category and the subcategory in the same column. It is very tough for you to bifurcate if you have large data sets. So what we can do is we can go to report layout, hit and click on show in outline form. So this one will create a separate column for the subcategory, in our case the variance. Now if you want to copy, you can easily copy and have a bifurcation automatically. Now if you want alto here as well, go to here and then repeat all. So this one will have the main category and the subcategory for each and every row. So go here, do not repeat, then it will take off. Then show in compact form, we'll get into the default value. If you want to have, so this one doesn't have a boundary or a table kind of thing. Just click on this one. This one will have a table form of thing with the boundaries, and then it creates a different column altogether for the subcategory. I'll go back to the default. Now if you want to have a blank line after each and every item, then you can have a blank line. So now you have a blank row after the main category. So alto subcategory blank row, Cias subcategory blank row. So this is again how you can customize your output or your data so that it is cosmetically good to appear, right? So that's all I wanted to cover in this particular video. Just to reiterate what all we covered a very basic pivot table where we just showcased a product and the revenue, and then we saw how to showcase the revenue numbers into percentages, and then we converted the dates into categories like months and quarterly basis. Then we introduced slicers, then we introduced timelines. For timelines, again to reiterate, you need to have a date format as one of the column in your data set. Then we saw how to create multiple tables out of a single table, and then we saw how to showcase the deviation from one month to another month, basically interacting the data in terms of deviations. And then we saw how to do calculations automatically by Excel by showing the profit values, where we just updated a formula or keyed in a formula within pivot, and the pivot took care of the calculations automatically. And finally we saw how to customize our layout, which is more pleasant to look at, right? I hope you liked this video. I know it was a lengthy video. We kind of wanted to cover the basics to a bit of advanced in pivot. Please, I would recommend you to get your hands dirty with playing in all these options. You may end up in certain difficulties and you may overcome by yourself. This is how you can learn pivot. You need to get your hands dirty. If you have any doubts, please post it as comments and I'll be happy to help you out. That's it, guys. I hope you like this video. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and share this video. Thanks a lot for watching and have a very nice day. Thank you.